Welcome to Growing a Dental Practice. All you need to know to start, run, and grow your dental practice. Each week, dental marketeer Mike Hennon chats with doctors Lewis Butler and Sahil Thakkar about their journey as principal dentists. Plus, interviews with prominent and upcoming figures in the world of dentistry and beyond. Now, here's your host, Mike Hennon.
So welcome everyone. Welcome to the second episode of the Growing a Dental Practice podcast. I am delighted and excited to introduce my client turned friend turned podcast co-host, Dr. Sahil Thakkar. He graduated from King's College London in 2015. Sahil is a member of the British Academy of Cosmetic Dentistry and the Royal College of Physicians and Surgeons, Glasgow. He's currently working towards a postgraduate diploma in orthodontics. This year, after a lot of planning and preparation, Sahil launched his first practice, Dickens Yard Dental. DYD is a squat practice located in the heart of Ealing, London. As the principal, he wants to change the perception of dental care. Welcome, Sahil.
Hi, Mike. Thanks for having me. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, really well, thanks. Looking forward to this. A little bit nervous, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes. I'm super impressed that you're happy to jump on this and obviously be my co-host. It's brilliant. Yeah, I mean, when you mentioned it, I thought, it's a pretty good idea. So I listen to a lot of podcasts. Yeah. Excited.
Brilliant. So, like I've already mentioned, Sahil is one of my two co-hosts. So we are joined by Lewis Butler. So it's great from my perspective because we've got two dentists, two new principals, and both coming from sort of different directions. So Lewis has joined his family practice, so it's an existing practice already. And as I just mentioned, Sahil has started a squat practice. So it's really exciting to kind of see the both of your journeys as you go from relatively new. So you've both started within the last 12 months or so. So it's exciting to see you from like the ground level upwards. And obviously I'm really excited to kind of get your input and perspective on a whole host of like business and marketing things that we're going to talk about. And obviously the guests that we bring on, then I'm a marketer, so it'd be great to pick at them from that perspective, but to have it from a dental professional's perspective as well will be brilliant. So without further ado, this episode is basically just talking about Sahil. So it's getting to learn him. It's basically a meet your co-host episode. So it's going to get very intimate.
No pressure.
Ask him no pressure. I'm going to ask him lots of questions about his background, why he started to practice, and then we'll dive into the juicy bits, which is what are the challenges he's faced starting a practice. What does he wish he'd known before, that kind of thing. So the bits that people listening to this podcast will hopefully find really useful, and I guess it will either encourage them to start their own squat practice or put them off. We'll find out.
Both good things. I think starting up, it's really important to know, what you're doing, why you're doing it. Well, not so much the what you're doing it. You learn that as you go along, but the why you're doing it keeps you going, because there are tough times ahead, and I wouldn't say I've had sleepless nights, but there's certainly very stressful ones where you don't really know what you're doing, but you kind of got to wing it because you're already in the process now. There's no turning back. So I think it'll be good from my perspective. I think all of the info out there. What I found when I was setting up was that it was a lot of picking from here and there and everywhere, which I think is fine, but no one ever hands you these things on a plate. So I think from my perspective, it'd be nice to almost have a little, over the course of however many podcasts, create a little guide as to what bits of info you need, where to go, how to get it, that sort of thing. So yeah, that's what I'm looking to put into this, and certainly having Lewis on board is really good. Really good for the podcast. I think it's good to have both perspectives, and I'm certainly looking forward to picking his brains as well.
Yes, good. Yeah, I'm looking forward to putting you in a room and just seeing what happens, like the sparks fly sort of thing. Okay, right. So let's start at the very beginning. So, when you're a child and as a kid, your background and your upbringing and all those kind of things, experiences as a pre-18-year-old can have a big impact on the person you become. So, like, what was your background before you turned 18?
Well, I grew up in West London and Northwest London, and what was my background? That's a really difficult question. I don't know. It was a pretty okay upbringing. There's not a lot to complain about. I think a few bits that that I thought were relevant to this and really stand out to me even today when I reflect back was that I had my mum as an inspiration, which is to say that she's someone who, she's up in the morning, she's always on the go, she's always, she's got a target, she meets a target, she sets a new target. So she's this really driven, hard-working person, which sort of rubs off on you after a while. So a lot of people say, oh, you've got this drive, and that's really where it comes from. It's having an objective and then just going for it, sort of thing. So I think that's something that was, as a kid, you're pretty impressionable, and that's something that I saw all the time. I saw how hard she worked, and I saw how dedicated she was to whatever she was trying to achieve. The other thing was I also saw how hard she worked, and I thought to myself, I never want to work that hard again. So that certainly did influence the path I took. Later on, you kind of want to replicate your parents, but you also want to make sure that you don't. When you see the hardships, you want to make sure you try not to go through those yourself. With regards to what else, I was pretty entrepreneurial as a kid. I was the kind of kid who was selling stuff all the time to someone. So whether that be, for example, when Woolworths closed down, I bought a whole chunk of stuff and chucked it on eBay and Amazon and made a few bits of money out of that.
Oh,
I think that was
amazing! That's great.
I think that was what 2007, 2008 when it closed down. I remember doing that. That raised a bit of money.
What sort of stuff did you buy?
It wasn't
pick and mix, was it?
No, it wasn't pick and mix. It was, electronic bits and bobs, like keyboards and blank CDs and stuff that I knew that, had a value to it. I didn't, I think there were a few garden ornaments and stuff thrown in as well. So, but I've always been that sort of person where if there's, money to be made, I'll try and spot it and do it. So even at school, I'd be selling sweets and chewing gum and stuff like that. So it is not so much the money that's the important bit. It's like a video game almost. It's like keeping score. It's like I like playing FIFA and scoring as many goals as you can because it's fun. It's not the process of it's like a tally or a scorecard to say, right, you're doing this game properly, that sort of thing. Playing this game well is proper English, I think.
You enjoyed the journey rather than the destination.
Yeah, exactly. And then I would say working. So I've always worked as a kid. So I never got paid for chores. I grew up in an Indian house, kind of expected to pay the chores. Do the chores, and not get paid for them. So my mum was. So I've got a younger sister, and my mum was insistent that we both, worked and built that work ethic. And she's got that off her dad, who would wake up at 5-6 o'clock in the morning. He had a post office, and he was always hardworking as well. Even when he retired, he'd wake up, pretty early. Sorry, going back to what I was saying, we always worked. So we always did paper rounds. We delivered the yellow pages. When I was at university, I used to work as a courier. So there was always an element of, right, there's got to be work hard and pay away. Although we were never asked to pay our way, we were just asked to actually just work and build up our work ethic. So those were like the most impressionable things as an under 18-year-old that I think are, that's made me who I am today. I suppose there's a background in terms of education. I went to school. That's always a bonus. So I a comprehensive school. It had a pretty dodgy reputation. I was almost always one of the smartest kids in the class, which is a big shock when you get into university and you're like, oh, right, I'm not the smartest kid anymore. But it was a kind of school where you weren't really pushed, so that wasn't particularly difficult. Even you could easily get the best in the class grades just coasting along, and I suppose that that's it's not really a good thing. And then you got to A levels, and you get a bit of a shock. And when I told my maths teacher, I only did maths for A level. Well, for two reasons. Firstly, because I thought I'd have the same teacher that I'd always had. And secondly, because I thought maths was really easy. And little did I know how difficult A-level maths would be.
Oh, my word. The step up from GCSE to A-level was just like phenomenal.
Well,
I was really, really good at GCSE.
Is this still maths? Yeah.
And I was like, oh my word. From my perspective, I basically had to resit all the first year A-level while I was doing the second year A-level just to get the grades up. It was literally total shock to the system.
But we made it. It's fine.
Yeah, we did it. It doesn't matter anymore, does it?
Yeah, no, exactly. It doesn't matter anymore. But yeah, so it wasn't a particularly high achieving school. So when I said to my maths teacher, he was deputy head something as well, and he said, "What are you going to do?" And I said, "I want to be a dentist." And he sort of looked at me and scoffed, as if that's not what we do here. What you on about? Which was, I guess, inspiring, but for all the wrong reasons. It was almost a case of
motivation.
I went to hunt him down and wave my results paper in his face on results day. Actually, that said, on results day, Thursdays, I have a paper round in the morning. Or I had a paper round in the morning. Don't do it anymore.
I really hope you do a paper round still.
No. Can you imagine? To be fair, though, I should probably go and deliver some of my own leaflets. So might need to get back into it.
You should do a leaflet drop or two. Yeah.
Yeah, might need to get back into the routine. So that was school, and then did all right, and I guess not a lot else happens before you turn 18.
And that's a lot of you've just said is kind of paves the way for you becoming your own boss, and you're wanting to create something. And so no, that's definitely some valuable lessons in there. And actually, it's a nice segue into you've just said that you knew from kind of quite a, I guess, early age that you wanted to be a dentist. So I guess what inspired, or did you?
No. It was actually so my aunt suggested I should be a dentist because all dentists are loaded. Which
is this the same aunt I met?
Yes, this is the same one that you've met. But at the time I was considering a few things. Banking sounds quite cool. Working in the city, all that kind of stuff. I've always wanted to teach as well. My work experience was in a school, and then as we spoke about before the podcast, my surname rhymes with the F word, so it's kind of once kids get hold of that that's the end of my teaching career. So all these things to think about. Yeah. And then, to be fair, dentistry is just a great fit because firstly, it's very varied, and sometimes I struggle to concentrate on just the one thing. If I didn't have the variety, I'd be pretty, I can't think of it. Sorry?
You're a bit fidgety, aren't you? You're always looking for the next thing and...
Yes, exactly. I can't sit and do one thing and be happy with it. I'm the kind of person who, if I go on holiday and someone said you're going on a beach holiday, I'd be like, no, I don't want to go. I'd rather stay at home. Yeah. If someone said you're going to go to a city and you're going to get to walk around and explore, I'd be like, yeah, let's go tomorrow. Let's go.
Yeah, I'm on the same page as you. I can't sit on a beach or around a pool. It just does my nut in.
I just don't need to tan anymore. I've got enough of a tan. It's I've been blessed. I've got a natural tan. I just don't want another tan.
But you could just sit by the pool and read a book, that kind of thing. I guess some people like the downtime, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, okay, now that I'm, in the last year or so, I've had phases where I felt borderline overwhelmed. And I think that's when I'm like, okay, fine, it would be nice to just sit down and read a book. But then there's always something going on in my brain and I can never concentrate on a book. So I've started listening to audiobooks because it's just it works better for me. And that's actually something that I highly recommend. The amount of information you can take in just listening to stuff. And it's actually quite soothing having Stephen Fry read you Harry Potter or who Barack Obama read you his book as well. So it's quite,
I'm a big fan of the podcast and the audio books. Like you say, it's the sort of thing you can just, as you know, I do quite a lot of running. So like, especially my long runs, like 7 hours long. Why don't you? Actually, this is something I want to touch on later. Because it's something I've noticed about both you and Lewis.
What's that?
But you're so focused on like the business. Obviously, you've got lots going on from business side. But I feel like you're neglecting yourselves.
God, this is going out in the public domain. We're trying to inspire people here. We're trying to tell people about our journeys, not my lack of gym.
No, it's nothing to do with that. It's just that, it's something that we need to bring attention to is that, you're running a business, you've got a lot of responsibility, you've got a lot of pressures, but it's just like, just remember to take care of yourself as well. That's not to say you're not, but it's just an observation.
No, I think you're absolutely right. But it's one of these things where I'm the kind of person who is very, on the one hand, I can be very committed to a cause and, see it through. But on the other hand, if there's something that's even slightly, not in the line of action, I will just, push it aside. And for me, going to the gym has become that since the pandemic and everything shutting down. I never got back into the routine again. Although, as you know, I now own a very expensive coat hanger.
Yes, you're fine.
Yes, which is great for stubbing toes on as well. So I should, one trick: if you're on the bike, you can't stub your toe on it. So I think I might go and try that out. It's quite soon.
That's the solution, isn't it? Right. So you can't injure yourself with the bike if you're using the bike. Yeah. I think that's probably our takeaway from the podcast this week.
I think anyone listening, and hopefully there'll be more than just our mums.
And your aunt.
Yes, exactly. So we've got three members of the audience already. I think anyone, hopefully Lewis too. So that's 4. Yeah. So I forgot what I was going to say. But just going back to your question, why dentistry? Okay. So there's several layers to this. I'm Indian, so there's always consider a profession. I don't have any dentists in my immediate family. My mum's cousin's a dentist who's I think 10 years, 15 years older than I am. But we weren't particularly close, so it wasn't really like it's a family member who's a dentist, so there wasn't that sort of thing. My mum wanted me to be a pilot because apparently all pilots have are really tall. They're all 6 foot plus. So I think that was more my mum wanting me to be tall, and somehow being a pilot would make that happen. I'm not sure. It's not quite. It's not quite logical. Well, this is it. And you get a uniform and you get to travel the world. And I'm thinking, Mum, these are all the things that you wanted, not me. Not me.
Love it.
But yeah, so there was that, and then I've already mentioned I wanted to do a couple of other things, and to be honest, dentistry's worked out really well. I really enjoy it. To be fair, a lot of people at university I know didn't enjoy it, and I'm always tinkering about with stuff. I'm always building stuff. I'm always looking for the next project. I like a bit of variety. There's never, it's never the same thing again. It is what you make of it, and there are so many opportunities in terms of you can go down the business route, you can go down the hospital route, the community route, be an associate, be a principal, be a specialist. You can pretty much do what you like, and if you don't like teeth, you can do gums, and if you don't like gums, you can do cancer surgery and other stuff. So it sounds like, oh, you're just a dentist, but even within dentistry, there's a lot of variation, which is, I'd highly recommend that.
It does. From talking to you and Lewis, it is very diverse, it's just a very interesting area, and that's kind of why I've kind of got hooked. I do the marketing. I'm a marketer, and I now focus on dentistry, as you know, and I absolutely love it. Like I was in the practice with Lewis last week, and I watched Double Extraction, and I absolutely loved it.
Were they both intentional?
It was an emergency appointment.
Okay.
So it was definitely like he did the background and the consent and stuff, but I just found I was like I can't imagine me being a dentist,
right?
But I loved just hanging around the practice and the innings, the goings on and stuff. It's just like really cool.
Yeah.
So obviously I love talking to you and Lewis and my other clients, and just find you're all so fascinating.
Really?
Yeah, I think you're all fascinating. Maybe I just have low expectations.
maybe, because I don't think I'm particularly fascinating. I think there's a lot going on. I just don't think it's particularly fascinating. But then I suppose I wouldn't, because I don't have the view that you do. And
I think you're fascinating. So,
thanks, man. Appreciate it. Means
if you weren't fascinating, you wouldn't be on the podcast.
Exactly. There we are. So we're only looking for fascinating people on this podcast.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
If you're in and around the Dr. Thakkar, then you're good.
Yeah. So
you would have been ripped as a teacher.
Yes, I would. I would have had to be that cool teacher that was down with the kids, because otherwise, if I tried to be a strict teacher, someone would just be like, Mr. F word. And
yeah,
I think the kind of person I am, I just laugh. I wouldn't even get angry. I'd just be in tears.
Yeah.
Anyway.
You just go with it.
That's it.
Okay, right. So that's your background, why you became a dentist. Before we dive further into your journey as principal and how that sort of journey came about, I would love to know what you've learned as an associate. What are some of the things that you've picked up working in someone else's practice?
Well, everything really. So, my mind's a bit fried at this question, but
I guess to reframe it is like, what do you? I guess probably less so from a clinical side, because that's kind of a given. But like, what have you learned in terms of like patient care or sort of management, that kind of thing?
Sure, but just going back to the clinical side, all of dentistry as an associate, really, because you leave dental school knowing how to do stuff, and it's not necessarily realistic because you might not have the materials in a given practice. You might not have, the time, or you might have a target. Sorry, excuse me. So the clinical stuff I learned as an associate, but also I've been the kind of dentist who's always on a course, and if I don't have something to learn that given month, I'll make sure to double up on it the following month. So being an associate has really just been a proving ground from the clinical side of stuff. It's a nice place to try new techniques, and have someone look over your shoulder. So I'm thinking more about my foundation year there. And then I've had how many associate jobs? I've only had 2 associate jobs. So I've stayed in one practice for 5 years because a few people mentioned along the way that it's nice to stay in the same place for a long time, because you get to learn what works, what doesn't. You get to build those relationships and that sort of thing. So I thought that was quite important to me, and you do get to basically learn the clinical side, and it's someone else's practice at the end of the day. It's not your reputation, really. So I'm not for a moment saying do anything dodgy or do anything unethical. I'm just saying it's a nice place to practice other stuff, and I'm sure lots of associates will see it like that. What did I learn from more the non-clinical side of stuff? Well, a lot of stuff. So training nurses. To be fair, what you learn very quickly is how to speak to other people. So I, from what I've told you, in terms of the jobs I had as a kid, they're all fairly solitary jobs. I think there's an element of wanting to be in charge. There's an element of wanting to be, the boss, if that makes sense. And so I didn't necessarily have that polish where I can say to, a colleague, do this and, do that, and them necessarily take it in the right way or get on board. So I think that's sort of something that I've learned throughout, speaking to different people, working as part of the team, which, you don't necessarily realize that you don't have unless you've got to do it, if that makes sense. So there's that. There's also, elements of the business of running a practice, and, what gets ordered, what goes wrong. Basically, as an associate, I like to throw my toys out the pram. Not so much in a bad way. I just have an expectation that everything should be done. Like, if you've given someone a job, it should just be done if they've accepted the job. If they haven't accepted the job, that's fine. And that doesn't always happen. And learning to deal with that's quite a big part of being an associate. What else?
Did you pick anything up from like a marketing side? Like, being as an associate within someone else's practice, so they take the main responsibility for marketing, but like, were there any elements?
There was no marketing.
Was there no marketing at all?
No. All the practices I've worked in, two of the main practices I worked in, my foundation practice, and then I worked as an associate in Chipping Norton. There wasn't any significant marketing. Both were reasonably busy without having to market. But then both had NHS contracts, and both were, fairly established. So there wasn't really much marketing going on that I knew of. The websites were relatively simple or archaic, would be a word. And then I've got another role in Putney. They do a bit of marketing. I'm not really, I've never really. That's more been a part-time job, so I've never really settled in that practice, I don't think. And I've not really. There's not really been a lot that I've seen. So, marketing as a practice owner now, it's all sort of new information. So I'm learning. That's not something I've had the opportunity to learn off someone else. It's something that I'm learning as I go along.
Yeah. Did you ever do anything as an associate to promote yourself?
I did, but I wasn't open-minded enough.
Okay. What did you do?
I did think about it. You asked if I thought about it.
You thought about it. Okay,
So, I did the usual that everyone does. I set up an Instagram account, take loads of photographs and that sort of stuff. I'm quite a critical person, so I never think my work's good enough. But then I look at some of the stuff that goes up on Instagram and I think, I think my work's on par. Or, I think my work's a little bit better. Or, no, I think my work's a little bit worse, that sort of thing. So that sort of stuff, but I never really went so far as I know, that there are super associates and things like that. I never really went so far as, building my own website or marketing myself as someone within a practice. Partly because, so at this stage, it'd be helpful if I explained my mindset at the time. Partly because the first, foundation year, I knew I was going to leave at the end of the year. That's only a 1-year role. And then the second practice, I knew I wanted to leave about 2 years in, and I'm now 5 years in. And so I didn't really think to start marketing, which in hindsight is a mistake, because had I marketed, there was nothing for me to lose. I could have still built a profile and, exploited that. But I think that's where it goes back to surrounding yourself with the right ethos and the right people. And when I realised that I wanted to move on, I also knew that I always wanted to set up a practice. So I went down the route of, how can I make myself a practice principal rather than how can I find myself another associate role in a nicer practice, or not necessarily a nicer practice, but a more driven practice. Or how can I... Well, actually, that's
it. Yeah, that's fair. That's brilliant. That was just a good understanding from my perspective. Because then you could have, if you had built up your personal profile and your personal brand, and some of that sort of, I guess, I don't want to say goodwill because that's kind of like a term associated with, the purchase of practice, but some of that reputation would have maybe rubbed off on your practice. But like you said, now you're now building something that's bigger than just you. So it's almost going back to sort of ground zero again, isn't it? And starting again.
Yeah, and I've always a couple of things. Firstly, I've always practiced nowhere near home, so we always practice, quite far away, and I always knew that I wanted to be within, I don't know, half an hour of home. So home being, Northwest London, Pinner. So I didn't, in my small-mindedness, I didn't really see the point in building up a profile when I was only going to move away. But I don't think it works like that looking at what other people have done. I think in hindsight, it would have been good to build up a profile. But that takes a certain level of, dedication and willingness to do that. And I did dismiss it. So I think in hindsight, that would have been a good idea, but I didn't do that. So, yeah.
That's cool. You're past that point now. But,
it's too late now.
Still, yeah. Well, you say that. We are probably going to do some stuff where we sort of try and build your personal brand, which would be quite exciting.
Mm-hmm.
But let's dive into the real juicy stuff. So, I've loved hearing about your background and what makes you tick, kind of thing. So, the bit that I think people are going to really enjoy listening about is that that becoming a principal. Like, how did the journey start? Why did you choose a Scott practice over buying a practice? That kind of thing. Let's start at the beginning. So when did you know you wanted to become a practice owner? And then just kind of walk me through the process and how we got here today would be beautiful.
So when did I know I wanted to be a practice owner? Probably before I went to dental school.
Yeah.
So there was always that in the back of my mind that I'd like to build something and own it and watch it grow. Which is just me and as a person. I like a bit of gardening. I like a bit of DIY. I like making flat pack. I like building stuff, watching it grow, and then sitting back and being able to say, "Hey, I did that." There's a sense of satisfaction in that. When did I know that I wanted to do it? After graduating as a dentist. Well, I knew I wanted to leave my associate job probably 3 years ago now. And at that stage, I didn't know entirely what I wanted to do because I alluded to this earlier. I was looking at other associate jobs to see if I could find anything better, but then I took the view that the grass is always greener, and there was nothing I saw in other practices. And again, it's probably because I'm not particularly good at networking, or not probably because I don't or didn't see the value in that, or I don't have any contacts in dentistry already, where they say that most jobs aren't actually advertised, or most good jobs aren't actually advertised. So I didn't really come across a practice where I thought, yeah, this is a definite step up. And sort of I was in that sort of zone for maybe 2, 3, 4 months, 6 months. I don't know, a few years ago. And then I decided, right, you've always wanted to own a practice. Let's look at owning a practice. So I signed up to all the usual brokers and started getting stuff through and all that kind of stuff. I mean, none of these things make sense to me. All the documents that come through with, it's like looking at a house, but a house everyone knows because you lived in a house, and it's kind of fairly self-explanatory. When you're looking at a business, don't really understand it fully. But then I sort of looked at it and thought, okay, what do I not like about? What do I want to change? And a big part of that was the NHS. I didn't like having a target. I didn't like this sort of treadmill of seeing as many patients as possible, as efficiently as possible, because to me that's not care. I wouldn't say that's not what I signed up for. I think you do work experience and you kind of know what you're getting into, but it's not something that I wanted to do. I also didn't like the idea of someone else having your balls in their hands, which is my euphemism for the NHS.
What a term.
I said earlier, I like to be in control of what's happening. I don't like it when, there's no diversification. If you're in an NHS practice, they pull the rug from under your feet. You've had it. So, that was my concern. And it was always, I was looking at these prospectuses and thinking, well, where can I add the value? And I'm looking at this as a, 27-year-old thinking, I can just about do general dentistry. I'm nothing, amazing. And at the same time, you're looking at all these, fantastic dentists on social media thinking, oh, wow, will I ever get to that stage? And, that becomes your yardstick, because I think maybe 10 years ago, you wouldn't have had that because all these platforms weren't so big. So you're then looking at, becoming an average dentist rather than now, the yardstick is so much bigger. So then I'm looking at these existing businesses thinking, well, where do I add the value? I don't think I can add value. This guy's selling as an implantologist. Well, how am I going to do that sort of thing? And you sort of feel out of your depth a little bit when you're looking at things like that. And as I said, I don't want to be part of the NHS. That I figured out fairly early on. And so it was only private practice. And there's two ways of owning a private practice. You either buy one or you set one up. And again, hearing from what other people are saying, the goodwill of a private practice is with the dentists working there, and if it's a single-handed practice, then it's with the principal. So where's my why am I buying a business that's tied into this other person's personality? Rightly so, because we are in the business of building relationships. We are in the business of building trust. And buying their equipment, their systems, their staff, and not having a say in any of it, and having to pay a lot of money for it. And around this time, I actually signed up for a how to set up a squat practice course. So first, a bit of advice. I think it was Samira Dental Accountants who run that. It was really inexpensive, and it was a good. I think the knowledge is pretty basic, but it's a good starter of what to look for, what planning you need, what size you need, where to get finance, how to set it up, how to whistle stop tour marketing. I mean, it's only a day's course. There's only so much you can learn, but it was a good starter, and it at the time was incredibly cheap. So that was a no-brainer. And it was almost around that time when I started thinking, well, actually, I think setting up from scratch is probably the best thing here, and running everything, designing everything yourself. So that is how that's how I ended up looking at a squat practice.
Yeah, that's cool. But I guess, like you said, like if you were to buy someone else's practice, then you've got like a lot of baggage, haven't you, to deal with, and probably quite a lot of resistance and just extra challenges. Yes, you've got a bit of a client base already, or a patient base, but you have got a lot to. And like you say, you prefer the control and prefer building something yourself. So actually, I think you're definitely right. If you'd gone down that route, then you probably would have regretted it.
Yeah, I mean,
having got to know you.
Yeah, I mean. There are moments even in building a squat practice where you think, well, what the hell am I doing?
Well, you probably think it'd be lovely to have like a nice, patient list already, but yeah, I mean, I feel like it's going to be sweet to you succeed.
Sorry,
I feel like building a squat practice, when you get to that a decent size, you'll be like, right, I've made this with my bare hands from scratch. And
yeah, and I think there's a lot to be said for that sense of satisfaction, but also knowing that, I'm the kind of person who gets decision paralysis, if that makes sense. Well, I'm a very thorough person. I like to know everything. And then when I've got all the information, this has started to change. In the last year, I've had no choice but to just get a move on. But I like to have all the information. And, even just what I explained to you, why did I, the inspiration for setting up a squat, I went round the bushes quite a bit before I got to the point. But I'm quite I like to have a thought process that's logical, and sometimes you get caught up in that. And I forgot where I was going with this.
I've also forgotten. So we were just talking about the why the squat, and I think just touching on the fact that you went down the squat route for a particular reason.
And that was just the satisfaction, the control, having things just so, and not having to put up with anyone else's stuff. And you've got the reassurance of you've got a list and there'll be money coming in on day one. But where's the fun in that, right? Where's the fun? Sometimes you just got to take a rinse.
Yes. Sorry? No, I love that about you. You just sort of, you've gone through it, and seeing what you've achieved already in like a short. It's only been a few months, isn't it, since you officially opened?
3 months, and I think it's 3.5 months now. So
it's mental how much you've achieved. Like, just for listeners, I actually had the pleasure of actually finally meeting you in person a couple of weeks back. Obviously,
Thank you, likewise.
The pandemic has had, we mainly meet people on Zoom, and never actually meet them face to face. So I had the pleasure of visiting DYD a couple of weeks back. It's it's still a work in progress, but it's amazing. Like, it's in a really location, an amazing location. It's in like a brand new. Is it multiplex? Like, it's a kind of residential with
mixed use, I think is the term.
So it's got lovely apartments and kind of like its own high street kind of thing. So lots of shops and stuff. Like there's like a gym box opening opposite you. So it's like a really nice area. And you walk into the practice. Yes, there's a few finishing touches that need to be done, but it doesn't feel like a practice.
I think that actually ties in really well about that thing I was saying that I forgot about. There's a few finishing touches. Well, for me, being a thorough person, everything needs to be just right before I'll consider doing it. But sometimes you just got to get started and then refine as you go along. And that's really important, because if you're setting up a squat practice, you run out of money and you need the money coming in. And learning that the hard way, where you've got no option but to open and just build as you go along, is that was a really good lesson for me. And you're absolutely right. There's quite a few finishing touches to go in. We need a desk at some point, a proper reception desk at some point. There's a few bits of decorations and stuff like that to go on.
Just a small bits though. But like I said, I'm walking in, I was like, this is the whole, like, you're challenging that perception of dental care. So I've only recently gone private. So it's talking to more dentists. I'm like, I should go private, just like from getting better care of my oral health and stuff like that. So I walked into your practice and was like, this doesn't feel like a practice. Like, you've got lots of greenery, and maybe we'll stick some photos up somewhere. But there's lots of greenery. Like, it's a very nice space to be. It's got a bit of an industrial feel, but it's still still warm enough. And obviously, greeted by your aunt was fantastic.
Yeah, she's a bit nuts, right?
Yeah, she's great. She's so good. And thoroughly. When I walked in, when I joined, because you weren't at the practice at the time.
No, I'm always late.
You were late.
Yes.
Yeah, you were even late to this podcast episode.
Yes, I was.
I walked in to meet your aunt, and first chat with her, and it was amazing how quickly she was like, "Oh, he's making me do a practice manager course."
Yeah. I'm not making. I just feel like someone needs to know what they're doing on that front, and that someone isn't me. So I think that goes with the ethos of how I'm trying to run the practice. I don't want to be building a team. Not just that, but I don't really want to be building a team who feels tied into the practice. Of course, I want people to stay, but I want people to stay because they want to stay, not because we pay well or we've got nice hours or that sort of stuff. But I'd like my own ethos to be reflected in my team, whereas I'm always on a course. I'm always learning something new. There's always, the more you learn, the more you realize you actually don't know anything. And, so I would like to we're not ready for trainees yet, I don't think. We've only been open a few months, so it'd be nice to get some trainees on board at some point. But it'd be really nice to mold people into that ethos and, send them on courses and get people scanning and get people taking x-rays and impressions and, that sort of stuff. So I think that's part of what I want everyone to do in the practice. Otherwise, you just rest on your laurels and you become mediocre, which is what we see with a lot of practices, which there's no fun in that. So that's...
it was brilliant. So obviously we had a great chat and stuff, and I'm looking forward to going back with once it's fully open, but like fully finished. But even then, like you say, it doesn't need to be fully finished. Like it's still working and it's still...
Yeah, we've got some doors. So pandemic and stuff like that. All our stuff's been delayed. So we've got some nice doors, but we haven't got them all on. And with regards to the decorate, that's me going into my sort of old way of doing stuff, where I get there are so many decisions. So we've got a massive, you've seen it, and it'll be on Google as well. Hopefully at some point I'll pull my socks up on the social media side of stuff, which is actually my plan for the rest of today, actually. So we'll see how.
Oh, good to hear.
Finally. So, but we've got a massive wall as you enter, and at the moment it's blank. But we're working on that. The decision was, do I spend 10 grand on this wall or do I just open? And at that point, the decision was, let's just open. Even now, the decision is, we're now looking at, I've just texted our equipment guy yesterday to say, we're going to need to start talking about second chair. Do I then set aside money for that, or do I do a feature wall, as you walk in? It'd be nice. But we're still, being a new business, we're still at that stage where we're having to make those decisions. So it's coming, but we'll give you a shout when it's fully finished.
That's a really important lesson, though, isn't it? Like, for someone who's starting a squat practice, is yes, you can make it look the bee's knees, and like you have invested in. Like, I saw your surgery, and you've invested in that because that's a space that you're going to spend a lot of time in, and it's you might as well spend the money on equipment now for that particular surgery because it will last a while and that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But like you said, like when it comes to like, oh, should I paint a wall, or should I open a second surgery to start bringing in more money and helping more patients? And actually that's really put it that way, make that decision, really.
Well, this is it. You've got to be pragmatic in how you approach these things, and I'm sure someone out there has got a better way of doing this. But this is the way that that I'm doing it. I don't doubt that someone's cracked this and at the same stage is a lot busier than we are, and has finished the practice to start off with. But for me, it was just, this is where we are. Let's get started and let's get the patients coming in, and we'll slowly build up. And it'll be nice for patients to see. It'll be nice for the community to see that actually, this place started and it didn't even look like it was open. And, now all of a sudden, which is true. We've had people come in and say, when did you open? We opened a month ago. Or are you open? And so we've had that problem of the place not looking open. Which I think slowed us down. We had, some trouble with the builders, but who doesn't? So that is, a negative in that sense. Make sure your place does look open. But we're getting, a lot less of that now that we've, got some more lighting up and that sort of thing. And as you say, we've got a green wall. Our house looked like a weed farm for the best part of the year. So my mom did that.
I remember you saying that. I was like, that's
no, honestly, it did. We had a whole room full of plants. It was mad.
Excellent. It's very nice. It's a very nice green wall, and we'll stick some photos up somewhere. I haven't figured out where we can stick that yet, but I think it's definitely a really nice feature of your like waiting area, which is great. And so you can see it from the outside, can't you? So
I'd say so. We're really lucky. We've got a massive shop front, so I think that's part of what sold the unit to me. And to be fair, part of the reason why I was in that situation where actually we never ran out of funds, but I was like, okay, right, we're getting dangerously low, and we're going to leave some walls, unfeatured, just, plain white paint. But had I gone for a smaller unit, we would have been fine. because then the building costs would have been lower, the amount of loan you take would have been lower. But then where's the fun in that, right? So with Dickens Yard Dental, we've got 5 rooms, so we're going to be here for a while.
You can definitely grow into it, can't you?
Well, yeah, exactly. So I've set it up with the intention of growing into it and sticking around for a bit, and hopefully it's part of the reason about trying to empower staff in their own education is so that the business can require as little input from me, and I can go and do something else, and hopefully another one, and then another one. But for this, at the moment, that's where we are.
Excellent. So, what have you been your biggest challenges to date? You've already touched on, say, the builders.
There's one big challenge. People never do what they say they will do. That's it. That's honestly, all challenges can be summarized into that little bit, which is to say that builders won't finish on time, or they'll cock something up, or you'll expect, I don't know, something to be finished on time and it won't be done on time. You'll expect solicitors to get this turned around in this amount of time, and they won't do it, and they'll say that they've done it, and or that they will do it, or equipment will arrive late, or it won't be fitted fully, or cabinets will come up, be fitted, but there'll be one door that's a random color, or stuff like that. So that gets a little bit frustrating. So as an example, we use a fiber optic company for our internet, and I signed up for that before I signed up for the lease, and it was fitted after we got our CQC approval. So it took literally, 5 months to get it sorted. But if they just said no from the start, then I wouldn't have bothered chasing them. And there's a lot of mental energy that goes into chasing someone to say, have you done this? Have you done this? Have you done this? Have you done this? And I wasn't, not part of a partnership, not part of a, I've got no dental backing. I've got no family members to help out. So it is just me doing all of this, which takes its toll after a while. So I think that's really the biggest challenge: people not doing what you want them to do, or what they said that they'll do. Apart from that, nothing's really been a challenge, because everything can be summarized into what I just said. People always let you down. So that's it.
That's brilliant. And what do you wish you'd known? So I feel like you were very prepared. I feel like you said, you went around the houses, you did a course on how to start a practice. That's a lot of commitment, and that's a lot, sort of shows quite a lot about who you are and how you approach things. But what do you feel like you wish you'd known that you didn't manage to find yourself?
I think the biggest thing I'd say there is value your time.
Okay.
So there's a lot of time that I spent speaking to random people. Let me think of an example. I don't know. There was a lot of time I spent looking into CCTV systems, and in the end, we didn't even go for one. And that was time that I didn't need to spend or research or all that sort of stuff. That I spent a lot of time looking at the model of TV that we need to put on the wall in front of patients. What I didn't think about is that the TV on the wall and the TV on the ceiling is the same model, which means that they both turn on and off at the same time when you hit the remote, which is really irritating. So little things like that. Don't waste time on little things like that. That'll happen. I'm the kind of person who spends 5 hours looking at a washing machine and buys the first one that I looked at anyway. So I've learned to stop doing that as much as possible. So don't worry so much about the nitty gritty in terms of what model of TV you're going to put in, or what model of coffee machine you're going to put in, or which fridge is going to go where. That sort of, stuff that doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. Even hand pieces, I mean, they're all the same. I spent ages looking at, so hand pieces are dental drills. I spent ages looking at what each one does and the pros and the cons. And in the end, I just went for what was on offer. So that was all a waste of time. I mean, I went for what was on offer because I'd looked at everything else, but it's something where in hindsight I could have shaved off maybe a day's worth of work, looking at handpieces and stools and sterilizing machines and that sort of stuff, and instead spend your time working on your systems. How are you going to answer the call when it comes in? What are you going to say to this patient? What's your pathway if someone wants a consultation? Draw out flow charts and stuff like that, because that does really help. And I'm, as you say, I'm trying to build something bigger than myself. It doesn't start. I should really just be a cog in this wheel, or in this machine rather. And having things like that written down, I found has been quite helpful in communicating to say, right, for this procedure, we need this ready. For this type of phone call, we need to do this. And so work on the bigger picture, and then maybe work on smaller things. Prioritize, really.
That's the processes and systems, especially in in a practice where it's very quickly going to be more than just you. Although there's people moving around, you've got to control that as not just control it, but maybe the systems in place will make the practice run. And like you say, you don't need to spend countless hours picking out the perfect TV or whatever. I guess especially at this stage, it's going to find something that works, meets the majority of your criteria. You can, it's not going to cost you an arm and a leg. And because you can always upgrade it, can't you? Certain stuff you invested quite a lot in your chair, but that's because that's going to be, you're going to have one chair hopefully, or very few chairs. But your TV, you can replace, and there's bits you can just chop and change, but just kind of get started really.
Exactly, and I would that's what I would change if I went back and did the process again. To be fair, now I've almost got a blueprint as to what I need to do in terms of let's find the location. Is it suitable? I've learned, is the shape of the building suitable for the type of practice that I wanted? Because I knew the type of practice I wanted before I was looking for sites. So there's, if I were to do this again, there's a massive blueprint to be able to do it. And, I haven't necessarily got that blueprint written down, but it's all in my brain somewhere. So that's, I think this will vary from person to person, because people will have their own sort of things that set them back. And for other people, they may be able to overlook the small stuff very easily, but then in the same time, not know what level of detail you need for something, and not think about the small stuff, if that makes sense. So I know that I've thought about how high the sockets are off the counter, because as an associate, the sockets are too close to the counter, which means that if the plug's got a wire coming out the bottom, the wire gets bent. So it's little things like that I need to look out for, and I'm glad that I did have that level of attention to detail, because I'm pretty sure the guy making the cabinets thought I was a bit of a nutter for saying that the sockets need to be, I don't know, X amount of centimeters off the counter, which I'm glad I did. But then on the other hand, there's detail and then there's too much detail, and I tend to get caught up in that. So, and this will vary from person to person. You don't really know it until you've done it. You've got to reflect back for yourself onto other projects that you've done and other things that you've achieved. So
I think I mentioned it when I visited you, but we need to write that stuff down, because you've got the how to build a practice, all the kind of the bigger picture stuff, but I feel like it would be how to physically build a practice, because as you put it out, there's the door handle for your disabled loo or your toilet.
Yes.
It was ridiculous. It was a really really small. I don't even know how anyone would really. It was just really difficult to hold on to. And it was how did they miss that? Had the person installing this?
So this is the thing. I don't think they missed. I don't think they missed it. I think the builders have just had enough, which is fine. I mean, they're due to come back, and we still owe them a bit of money. So I'm sure they'll turn up. And if they don't, well, I've got a budget to pay someone else. So that that's an important thing. Always, fundamentally, you've got to trust someone at the end of the day, but always make sure that you finish on top, because otherwise, people drag their heels and they don't come back. And because at the moment it's, making hay whilst the sun shines. With the pandemic, I think builders are really busy as well. And at the end of the day, we're a profession and they're a trade. So, that's sort of to be expected. So it's little things like that where I haven't necessarily missed. It's just not been done, which is, a frustrating thing. So it goes back to the biggest challenge where people always let you down, and that's to be expected. You've just got to take a deep breath, move on. And as long as your business is running and as long as patients are coming and they're not leaving unhappy, everyone's, leaving fairly happy, and we've not had any, complaints or issues. We've had, pretty much all positive feedback, because, as you say, it doesn't seem like a dentist, which is a problem, because there's no significant branding on the inside of in the reception area, so you don't really know you're sat in a dentist's unless you look on the outside. So we are working on that. Before the end of the month, we should have a load more branding, so that patients know where they are, because sometimes you just got to dumb it down for people, and it's just how it is. I mean, I'm sure you've been at the end of this, and I definitely have, where sometimes something's staring at you in the face and you still don't see it. And sometimes you just got to make things easy for our subconscious, and writing Dickens Yard Dental across the wall is not a particularly onerous task, and we just haven't done it because we didn't get around to it. And patients are still coming in, so we were doing all right. But little rookie errors that can easily be improved. It's not a problem.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Perfect. So we've touched on the challenges and the stuff that you wish you'd known. What are the bits that you've enjoyed the most so far? Like, which bits have made you think, actually, this is exactly why I'm doing it. Like this, I'm loving this. This is exactly what I wanted to do.
Quite a few bits, actually. Firstly, being in the position now where I can just a few months in text the equipment guy and say, hey, we need to talk about a second chair. So that's quite satisfying, feeling ready to put more equipment in. The other favorite bits, well, actually sometimes I just sit in reception and think, oh wow, I did this with a lot of help of other people, but it's just, that's quite satisfying. Other favorite bits, from a clinical perspective, patients actually saying, so we scan all of our patients, which, I've got an iTero and every sleeve costs money, which is a significant part of, the cost of putting a patient in that chair. But patients are like, wow, this is amazing. I've never seen this before. And, that just, sells your ethos, sells your practice to the patient more than anything else you could say. Because as a new dentist, as a new patient, it's a trust-based profession. It's a trust-based business. This is something that is objective rather than subjective, and patients really appreciate that. And it's just really cool tech. And from our perspective, we want patients to keep coming back. And if we can do something that's remarkable, which this is, because a lot of practices have an iTero, but they won't necessarily, or whatever other scanner brands are available, but they won't necessarily use it on every single patient because there's a time attached to that, and time costs money. But what I'm finding is that I don't have to see very many patients to be reasonably booked up, because the iTero does a lot of talking. There's a lot of stuff that patients want to change and they've never liked, and are now in a position to change because everyone's been sitting at home for. I don't have to preach to the converted. I'm sure a lot of people who choose to listen to this will know what position other people are in. People are happy to get stuff done that they wouldn't otherwise have done. And I think a large part of that goes to, technology, scanning and cameras and stuff like that. And, having that TV that turns on when the ceiling one turns off, or vice versa. I think this is something I need to take a video of that needs to go as part of this podcast, because I'm not sure people will necessarily understand. So what's going on, but
well, so basically, Sahil's got a TV on the ceiling for patients to watch Netflix or whatever they want to choose, and then there's a TV on like the front wall opposite the chair, so he can show his X-rays and that kind of and scans and everything like that. and same model, same TV, and obviously one control turns both on or off at the same time. And if he, I was watching him trying to turn one TV on by sort of covering the sensor, and then forgetting to do that to turn it off. And obviously, as he turns the other one off, the other one comes on. It was just like, it's just a bit of a.
It's a bit of a joke shop. But it's little things like that where
if you would have thought, I would have done the same thing. I would have thought, right, let's get 2 matching TVs.
Yeah, because it would bug me. It bugs me so much. If I had a Samsung one on the screen on the ceiling and a Sony one opposite, that would be really irritating. But at least now I can say I've got 2 remotes. If one gets lost, we've got a spare. But I think we're figuring out what angle to hit the TV at with the remote, infrared beam or whatever it is, and we're trying to figure it out. So it is working. But yeah, the favourite bits have just been patients saying, "Oh wow, this is amazing. We've never had this before." Or when we get a lot of patients from other countries as well. It's quite a diverse area, and they just don't get that level of checkup where I'm checking under their chin and on their neck for signs of cancer and stuff like that, and they're like, "No dentist has ever done this," and I'm like, "Well, we're different." So that's quite satisfying. Also, having the time of being in a private practice and just saying, so I said this to a few of my dental friends, where the way that we've worked out our fee structure is that everything pays the same. So unlike on the NHS, or even unlike in some private practices where certain procedures are seen as loss leaders because no one will pay that fee for them, we make the same hourly rate pretty much within 10% of most of our procedures. So it doesn't bother me whether I'm doing an extraction or a filling or a denture or a bridge or whatever, because that element's completely out of it, because I've sat down and worked. And I was explaining this to a friend, and he was a little bit shocked that I'd gone to that level of detail. But to me, a big part of what I wanted to do was not be influenced. And I can trust my own ethics, and to be fair, I can trust most people's ethics, but it's always nice not to have that subconscious saying, well, actually, if you take this tooth out, you're going to be better off rather than if you fill it, which is what the NHS fosters. So that's been quite nice, and as a result of that, actually booking the right amount of time for people so that you can explain stuff properly and not then having to run late is quite nice. And we've got quite a few anxious patients off the back of that, because they know that we'll take the time, and we don't offer sedation or anything like that. It's literally me and a bit of time and just being nice to people. So that's all quite satisfying. And I was doing this in my previous practice as well, but knowing that I'm doing it at a loss. So it just feels, it gives you that warm fuzzy feeling inside that people are actually paying you properly for a skill that you developed. So that's quite nice. So those are the favourite parts, really.
Good. No, it's good. And you can, I can tell you're enjoying it. Like you can just, you can tell that you're kind of loving life as principal. And it's good. No, it's. I mean,
there are its downsides, and more than one occasion I thought, well, why did I do this?
Yeah.
Especially in the run up to opening. CQC was a breeze, by the way. So anyone listening to this, CQC was absolutely fine. Maybe it's just because I'm a thorough person and I was well prepared. I didn't think I was well prepared, but I had answers to most of the questions. Actually, another name drop: Dental Compliance Made Easy. They've got pretty much everything you need. Just you've got to read it, obviously. But they're pretty good. So with regards to what I was saying, actually, there were more than one occasion where I thought, what on earth are you doing? Why are you doing this? You're creaming it as an associate. But then on the flip side, why did I think that setting up a squat practice wasn't really a risk? Because at the end of the day, if it all goes tits up, I'm still a dentist. I can still earn well. I can still pay back all the debt.
Yeah.
So in fact, it isn't risk. It's actually, as dentists, we're very well placed to take such a risk, and I think people should just go for it.
Good, love it. That's a really good way to sort of wrap up Although I say wrap up, I've still got a few more questions I need to ask you. So what is next for sort of DYD? And you've kind of already alluded to the idea of maybe moving beyond just the one practice.
Let's short-term goals. We need to completely fill our first chair throughout the week. So we're currently managing to fill this chair 4 days a week with a combination of me and the hygienist. We need to bring other skills in. So I don't do any Botox and fillers and stuff like that. And if anyone is listening and they do Botox and fillers and stuff like that, please give us a shout. Because as it happens, Mike, advertising for things on podcasts is free. Advertising for things online is not. So thank you very much. But that's the next thing. Sort of bringing in other skills and things like that. With regards to, again, in the short/medium term, bringing in a second chair, and within the practice in the longer term, starting to bring more specialties in. So we're starting to keep a list of what we're referring, where we're referring, why we're referring it, and it just makes sense for the patient journey to keep them in-house, and also from a business perspective to keep them in-house. And even from a clinical perspective, I want to be able to pick brains of other people that are working with me. So that's that. And then externally, eventually another practice, because the way that I'm trying to run this is, and it doesn't always work, but the way that I'm trying to run this is that I should be as hands-off as possible. Obviously, it's early days. So there's a lot of information that's still in my head that hasn't been passed to anyone else, like the passwords to certain things, or where where to upload the meter readings, for example. But that will eventually, as we need to do it, I'll pass it away to someone else, and we'll start hiring more people, so even those responsibilities can get shared out. But what I'm hopefully trying to develop is and again, I don't think this is unique, is a model where no one person is in charge of all the cogs. So if someone's ill or someone's on holiday, the business doesn't fall apart. Specifically me being on holiday, because I want to be on holiday again. I'd like to go on holiday at some point. I don't want this to take over my life. And then just copying that and building that somewhere else. So that's the plan.
Awesome. Love it. Brilliant. And then one final question, just to wrap things up properly, is what advice? So you've already given some tips and you've said a few things like this is what you should consider. But if there's a few things, words of advice you should give someone considering starting a practice, what would that be?
Again, another name drop. Read Simon Sinek's book, Start With Why. Basically, just read. Just read or listen or stuff like that. I think, Mike, you and I have talked about some of our favourite books on the subject of marketing. Yeah,
I think we could probably spend a whole...
We should do another episode on this.
Just do it, just like the library or something. We call it like the library episode or something like that. We've got lots to talk about.
That's it. But I think the most important one is start with why, because there'll be points at which you'll think, what the hell are you doing? And you need to know, or just have that reminder, and even write it down. I'm not a big thing about. I've not got a big thing about writing stuff down, like 5-year plans and stuff like that. I sort of have it in my head, which apparently writing stuff down creates accountability, in which case, go for it. But knowing what you're doing, why you're doing it, what you're hoping to achieve out of it is really, really important. And there will be points at which you'll think to yourself, why am I bothering? And you need to go back to that. Another bit of advice, which has just gone straight out of my head, was build the business first, if that makes sense. Learn what type of practice you want to open, what you get your kicks out of. If it's a bit of everything, then how are you going to be different to the rest? Because what I found is that you don't need to be cheaper than the rest. We're certainly not cheaper than the rest. But you've got to be different. And we get patients from adjacent practices or practices just down the road coming to us and saying, oh, this is so much nicer. So I think building that part of the business, learning what the purpose of the business, your vision for the business, your mission, your values, that sort of thing, is a lot more important than you would think at first. And I think building that first and then putting the business where it fits. And I'm sure we can do future episodes on how I found the location and who I spoke to, because I've got a long list of people whose brains I've picked. But I knew what I wanted to do before I set aside, or if you're thinking of doing the journey, I mean, list the things that you don't like about where you work, and then surely the plan for the business is the exact opposite. If you don't like having rubbish materials, and the plan for the business would be you're going to have the best materials, and that sort of thing. So if you don't like having paper records, I don't know anyone who does still have paper records, and your plan for the business is we're going to be digital. So I think that's really, really important. You need to know what you're doing, why you're doing it. And I personally, bearing in mind this is the first practice that I've done, so I'm not speaking from a position of being able to reflect on 5 practices or 10 practices like other people, but I personally think you need to know the type of business you're going to build before you build it. And whatever that is, stick to it. It could be budget dentistry, but private. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. As long as you know and you don't stray from that. So yeah, I think that's really important. I'm going to go around in circles, so I'm going to let you take over.
No, perfect. No, I love it. That's really good advice. And to be honest, there was some really good things throughout our chat. And I think I said to you when we started, it'll be about half an hour, but we've definitely gone over the hour mark. But
you're gonna need to edit the hell out of this.
I'm planning to put it all up because it's all useful. We'll cross that bridge later. But no, I think it's all the stuff that you said is great. Like I said at the beginning, it's going to be really interesting, and that's kind of, I guess that's, you even asked me like, what's the USP of this podcast? Because there are a few other podcasts out there, but it's that having that like insight from yourself and Lewis, both coming from this it's still a very new world to you.
It's almost like reality TV, but it's reality podcast.
Basically, it's a reality podcast, yeah, basically. So, we've got that ability to see things from the perspective of someone who's just gone through this process or is still going through this process. It's not someone who's, been a principal for 30 years. So they've got lots of experience on it. It's like, right, how are you navigating this landscape right now, which is great. And another thing that we want to obviously achieve is that a lot of this content is just for your dentists. So we want to try and make this more accessible to the other dental professionals out there, because it's not just a dentist that builds a practice, it's the nurses, the receptionists, the practice managers. So we're going to get people from all areas of dentistry, just so we because everyone, there is a focus on the business and marketing side of things, but there's people within the practice, everyone is sort of touches those areas. So that's kind of where we want to go and just help as many people within the practice. And I'm really excited and really happy to have you on board.
Thank you. I'm glad to be.
This is one of many hour chats that we've had over the last 6 months.
Yes,
we could talk forever.
Yes, we could. To be fair, yes, it doesn't. There's a lot to talk about. There's a lot to talk about.
Yeah.
I also think. You're still recording.
Yeah, we haven't said goodbye yet. Do you want to wrap this up?
No. I was just going to say the little summary you did at the start would be really. Sorry, at the end would be really good at the start. Obviously, I don't know what you've discussed with Lewis, and it may. I assume that'll be the first one, so it may already be in there. But I thought that was a really concise way of describing what we're doing here.
Yeah. Okay, right. We'll wrap this up, and then I'll edit that bit out.
Sure.
So
I've given you some editing to do.
Yeah. So I obviously thoroughly enjoyed our chat. Really enjoyed getting to know you more, which is I've learned something about today, and I feel like I know you quite well anyway. Really looking forward to you being on this journey with me and Lewis. I'm excited to see where you go as a principal and a practice owner, and I can see business guru at some point, like a classic dentist turned course creator.
I think Yeah, so a lot of people have already. Firstly, thank you for your kind words, and I'm really pleased to be here. And when you said, "Yeah, let's do a podcast," or I'm considering doing a podcast, I thought, yeah, this is a great idea because there's so much that I've learned that would be really nice to share with other people, and see other people grow. And just what I was saying at the start, a lot of people have already approached me saying, oh, what have you done? How have you done it? What do you do in this scenario? And it would be nice to put these thoughts down and help other people in the process. And Course Guru, let's see. I think it's something quite difficult to teach because
I guess there's so many variables.
It depends. Sorry,
there are so many variables. Like
it's not so much that; it's how much. It's how much the person is then engaged in it. I assume. Yeah. I was going to say it's not really clinical, but I suppose it is because you can go on a course about placing implants and then never place an implant, sort of thing. And so I think that's something that I would want. If I did teach something, I would want people to go and progress because I'm now invested in that process. So I think let's see.
Yeah. Okay. Right. In that case, we'll wrap it up. So I will see you on another episode.
Yeah. Thank you for having me, and I'll see you soon.
Brilliant. Cheers, mate. Bye.
Cheers. Bye.
Thanks for listening to Growing a Dental Practice. For more insights, please subscribe and do leave us a review so that other people can find us. You can also find us on social media and on our website, growingadentalpractice.com.